Dalton, my name is Haley. I'll be your occupational therapy student today.
Okay.
Before we get started, do you mind letting me know your full name and your date of birth?
Dalton Barron, April 29th, 1999.
Okay. I see that we are meeting today to kind of work on some impacts on your daily life that you're having because of general anxiety. Do you feel comfortable sharing today?
Yeah, it's been a lot with school mainly. It's been a lot in the classroom. I've been having trouble with like assignments and things like that. We have a lot of group projects that we have to do, and I've had a lot of trouble kind of interacting with people. My main thing that's happening a lot right now is whenever we have, questions in class and things like that. I have a lot of really bad, I guess, thoughts that I'll kind of say to myself, and I won't think that I'll be able to know the answer or anything, even if I've studied, and I maybe do know it. But our professor will ask us a question, and I really just, I won't be able to raise my hand or ask or anything. And then, sometimes when they do ask me, maybe I'll kind of lock up, and I won't really be able to do it very well. I won't be able to answer the question.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know it was probably difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So I know sometimes those thoughts, they can get in the way and they can make situations a little more difficult. Is the school situation the most recent one you can think of?
Yeah, I don't work right now, so I really don't have to worry about anything like that. So usually, yeah, it's just I'm having a lot of my trouble at school with getting assignments done or answering questions and things like that.
Okay.
That's probably been what's been kind of the most prominent thing, the hardest thing for me right now.
So that is a great example that you shared.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can kind of start with that situation today.
Mm-hmm.
And what we can do is I have something called a cognitive behavioral triangle therapy. And what I'd like to do is do maybe some cognitive behavioral therapy with you today. And basically what this process is, it helps us take that thought, behavior, and feeling, kind of identify what it was in the situation, and then see if there's a way that we can change it to a new thought or behavior to try later on.
Okay.
Does that feel okay with you?
Yeah.
For trying? Okay.
Yeah.
So I have this sheet for us. We'll fill it out together.
Okay.
So thinking of that situation, when the question was asked in class, what was the first thought that came to mind?
Don't raise your hand in case you get it wrong.
Okay, so let's jot that down in that box right there. So when you had that thought, what was the feeling that came with it for you?
Kind of like a pit in my stomach. Like really, it was a lot of, I guess, nerves. Like it was like I was kind of worried that I guess that if nobody answered, I'd get picked, and then I would, I'd be kind of forced into that situation of having to answer it anyways, and not knowing it because I didn't want to be wrong in front of everybody.
Okay, so we'll write that one down there. So then this next one is the behavior. So what did you do after you had that thought? Then you had those feelings, and then what did you do in turn?
I just kind of tried to kind of shrink down in my seat, I guess, to where I wouldn't get picked if she did start trying to pick somebody.
Okay, let's write that down in the behavior box. Okay, so now that we've completed the triangle, what we've done is we've taken a difficult situation where anxiety made it difficult for you to be able to participate in this, for your example, which was school. So we identified that thought, which you said, raise your hand in class, you'll get the answer wrong if you do try to answer it.
Just kind of worried I'd get the answer wrong, yeah.
So then we identified that feeling that came with it. You said nervous, anxious, and then our behavior from that was to just be as quiet as possible and not answer.
Yeah.
So now that we've identified all of those, this is what we were kind of finding out was making you anxious in that situation, since that is your main occupation with your school right now. So now what we want to do is we want to try to make a new thought and new behavior. So think of it as, say you had a friend and they came to you and said, I was in class the other day and they were asking a question and I felt dumb and I didn't want to answer it. And so what would you say to that friend?
Oh goodness. I mean, I don't think there'd really be a problem. I mean, I would tell them it's like no one's really going to be upset with you if you get it wrong. No one's gonna judge you.
Okay, so let's try to think of that as our new thought. You are going to talk to yourself as if you are the friend. So let's write that down as our new thought.
Okay.
So I know you said you get those feelings, and it might be easy to say those things to a friend. In your situation, what evidence would you say would show that you're going to get it wrong and everybody's going to judge you?
I guess there really wouldn't be any. I mean, normally when anybody answers it, no one really seems like they're judging them or they're disappointed in them. But yeah, so I guess there really wouldn't be any.
Okay. So if we said that new thought in that situation, question was asked, and you said, no one's going to judge me if I get it wrong. I can just go ahead and answer. Our behavior before, when we said, don't do it, you'll be judged, you said that you were just going to be quiet. If you were to start out with this new thought, what do you think your behavior would be? Because before you said not answer it and just be quiet in class.
Maybe try to kind of raise my hand, or at least don't shy away from it and just kind of sit up and try to be active and maybe answer the question or in like participation in class, like talking about certain topics.
Okay, so let's write that one down under our new behavior.
Okay, so I guess being more active still sounds kind of a little nerve-wracking to answer, to raise my hand and answer it, but I think I would at least try to be more active, not so much kind of shrinking away.
And then say if you were to go through all these steps of answering the question, having that new thought, having that new behavior, how do you think that would make you feel after you were able to achieve that?
I mean, I think it would feel good to have that confidence of answering that question, even if I didn't get it right, still not really being able to worry about it, because I mean, it would help me with learning for sure. It'd help me understand it better, even if I didn't get it right.
Okay.
Well, who's getting arrested out there?
Okay, so let's take it kind of a step further. What do you think a step is that you can do to try to have that thought next time you're in this situation?
To kind of be more positive, or kind of, oh goodness. I guess, try to kind of be more engaged in class, I guess, beforehand, so I have a little bit more context to the question, maybe.
Okay.
So kind of sitting up, paying good attention, maybe, studying a little bit more beforehand, or, maybe just kind of raising my hand and trying to answer that question, just so, I maybe get used to it, where even if I don't get it right, at least it's still, I did try, something like that. Just a lot more being active in class.
Okay. So that is a great plan. I think what we can do is try to go through these steps every time that we're in that situation. We can try it for next time. Okay, so this is a behavior plan. So what I want to do is try to break that behavior that you're doing. So the behavior that you said you're doing is you're having the negative thought, which we said let's try to do that new thought, like you're talking to a friend. And then you're having the feeling of anxious, and then you're having the behavior of not participating in class, which you said you want to participate more.
Yes.
So let's kind of break that behavior down. What can we do to break that behavior? So we'll break it down into steps, and then we can try to take small steps and to be able to get further and more closer to your goal of being more active and answering questions. So step one, we could say, think of an answer.
Okay.
So let's write step one.
That makes sense.
Now step two, what do you think would be the next step you would have to do to try to be able to reach your goal of answering in class?
Well, I'd have to raise my hand. I couldn't just, I wouldn't be able to just shout it. I think that'd be terrifying.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think raising my hand to kind of answer the question.
Okay. So let's write that as our step two. We're going to do raising our hand. So now we have, what would be the next step you think in this situation? You've gotten to the point where you thought of an answer. You've raised your hand.
If I were to get picked, if I had any negative thoughts or anything, just kind of thinking positive that, like, even if the answer I've come up with is wrong, answering this question will still help me get to the right answer. And that's the worst case, I guess.
Okay.
As I still get to that right answer, or if I just get it right, then it works.
Okay, so I think that would be a great step one. So let's say step one, we are going to have our positive thought, that new thought of it's okay if you get it wrong, nobody's going to judge you.
So kind of add that to the step one with that kind of thinking of an answer, trying to like being positive with it.
We'll say being positive, and then we can say step two would be our thinking of the answer. Step three would be our raising hand.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then for step four, you get picked upon. What do you do next?
Answer the question.
Okay.
Because at that point I've prepared, I feel like, you know.
Okay, let's write down our step four. We broke down the behavior now. Thinking back to what we said, we had that new thought to begin with. We went through the steps. You were able to answer in class. Like you said, there was no evidence as to anything would happen. And then you said if you were to be able to answer, it would make you feel good and more confident.
Yeah.
Which step do you want to try to work on this week to be able to try to achieve that goal and that new feeling?
Maybe that positive self-talk beforehand, you know, really just kind of like working up to the point where I could, you know, raise that hand and then answer it. Maybe like really, if I do start to have a negative thought about not being able to answer, maybe like kind of telling myself like, what's the worst that would happen if you did this, you know, and, you know, you would still get, you know, to that answer.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great step to start with this week. Just starting with the positive thoughts. We can do the same thing like we did here together. Sometimes those automatic thoughts come and then gives us the anxiety, what you were feeling, and then gives us the behavior. So when you have that thought, I want you to try to make that new thought. Go through the same things. What feeling would that negative one give you? What feeling would that positive one give you?
Okay.
And then what would your behavior be on the end of it? So kind of, I'll give you this, just kind of mentally walking through this, or you can keep it jotted down somewhere, going through that process. Let's just start with step one this week, and then we can come back next week and see how it went.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for me?
No, I think that sounds like a really good plan.
Okay, so tell me what your plan is going to be this week.
So if I start having, I'm going to use kind of the triangle, and if I start having kind of a negative thought, you know, maybe I could, you know, at first I'll jot it down, or I'll just use this and kind of think how it makes me feel and, you know, what that's going to cause, and then try to find, you know, a new thought and a new behavior to see how that makes me feel, to see if it kind of, you know, to start trying to work towards those positive thoughts instead of just kind of those always thinking negative and always, you know, thinking the worst case is what's going to happen, even though the worst case is usually really not realistic for what I pay. Okay.
Well, do you have any questions for me? I think this is a great place to start, and then we can meet back next week and see how it went.
No, I'm excited to try this. I think it'll help.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, and I'll just see you next time.
Yeah.